Hello and most welcome back. This will be a part B here. We got some problems with the recording, so I'm afraid 40 minutes disappeared. I need to do a rehearsal, not something I look forward to, but since the text was extremely interesting, why not? Sometimes these things just cannot be avoided. And as far as I got lost was to page 44, and we spoke about somebody can only appreciate once they have been trained, which is Wittgenstein's own expression for it. One could say that this is referring to the knowledge viewpoint. Could be vaguely compared to Bayesian statistics and mathematics, where the knowledge of the person is emphasized decisively. What do we know is participating in the experience? And I think it becomes more obvious the more one go into Wittgenstein's excursion to the human life world, that our knowledge is not an insignificant part of what's going on. It has a quite decisive role to play. See at all the artists, all the ones who get more and more skilled with their things. It's not the same world anymore once you acquire a certain level of skill in seeing photos, landscapes, paintings, views. Language is here a very, very good example. Knowing in a language, and I myself learned a new language at an adult age, and that definitely opened up a completely different depth to things. It made it didn't really make sense anymore to talk about the world out there as completely isolated from what I know. Could be that all the knowledge that we share we become ignorant of because of habit. And therefore, somewhere in that development, we get amnesia, to use a Heideggerian phrase. We forget that we once learned all these things, and we start assuming them to be outside ourselves. Then all of a sudden we have just world out there, and we human beings then become not much more than computers registering what is outside of us. But as we said in the interview with Professor Peter Mostad, blank slate is an impossibility. It simply doesn't make any sense whatsoever to assume that human beings are born into this world just to absorb knowledge, information of that sad world. So I will continue where the recording stopped last time. And we were talking about how you can become trained to understand music, to get into the finesses, the highlights. Once he has mastered the language of music, he will, as it were, automatically or spontaneously respond to music. This shows that immediate expressions of our understanding of the language of music are by no means natural in the way of our expression of pain, for instance, are. Those expressions of understanding music presupposes knowledge and skills without, however, entailing deliberate recourse to such knowledge and skills. A person who is able to express his understanding of music succeeds in doing so by reproducing what he has understood with an appropriate expression. For instance, by playing or singing it the right way. Or he succeeds through accompanying his listening with suitable gestures or through discovering parallels from other areas. For instance, a poem by Eichendorff, which exactly corresponds to or agrees with a certain passage in Schumann. From discovering such parallels, we get great satisfaction, as Wittgenstein observes. But are these possibilities always open to us? Let us consider the following case. But how is it if someone pronounces a sentence in a very expressive way? If, for example, someone pronounces a certain phrase in a tone and in a manner in which only an American can pronounce it, should I here be able to reproduce the expression in any other way? Here one might think, for example, of Philip Marlowe's words in the screen version of the final dialogue of Raymond Chandler's thriller The Big Sleep. The expression which the words bear in the film cannot be rendered in a different medium. No translation can do justice to it, and once you have heard them spoken by Humphrey Bogart, you will feel that nothing can ever really take the place of that. But even if one has never heard that, one may still imagine what it would sound like, and then one will say, yes, that is the way it must be. That is unmistakable. Of course, if one speaks American English well, one may be able to imitate that expression. But the expression itself, that which we call unmistakable, is something to which nothing different will correspond. it can be separated neither from this context nor from this kind of performance. But it is a quite specific expression. After all, it expresses something quite specific. But note, what it expresses is not explained through our being able to replace it by this and that, but through its surroundings. For it is in them that what he says appears expressive. For what appears expressive to us would not be called expressive by someone who is, so to speak, unfamiliar with its implication. We feel that the expression is something peculiar, something specific, something which we are able neither to explain in a satisfactory way, nor to replace by anything corresponding to it. For this reason, we are inclined to speak of a specific experience and to leave it at that. But if we follow this inclination, Wittgenstein says we shall be misguided and make a double mistake. First of all, it is not the experience itself to which the expression owes its specificity. And secondly, something can be said about why we feel that the expression is somehow specific. The above quoted passage indicates that the specificity of an expression is a function of its surroundings. Which is why the experience in question presupposes an understanding of the context of the expression. A person who is not familiar with the Chandler atmosphere will not get much out of those words or that special way of pronouncing them. Thus, the experience of a specific expression is not an independent phenomenon which resists all further attempts at elucidation. There are several later passages where Wittgenstein returns to this subject. Namely, the question of experiencing something specific. And there he discusses it in different connections. The printed text of the philosophical investigations contains allusions to this kind of problem too, but these allusions are extremely hard to make anything of, as they are not placed in the right kind of context. In order to get a better grasp of this type of problem, we shall now leave the examples we have been discussing so far and try to get clearer about what Wittgenstein means by the term specific. There's a relatively extensive, though inconclusive, and apparently rambling discussion of specific phenomena in Remarks on the Philosophy of Psychology. Here it is color impressions in particular, and for purposes of comparison, experiences of sounds. Which are called specific. Thus we read, red is something specific. Colors are something specific. And in 2 out of these, of the 3 cases, statements of this type are enclosed by quotation marks, indicating that they are not statements by Wittgenstein himself, but objects of his investigation. What does a speaker who uses a sentence like that X is something specific. And in 2 out of the 3 cases, statements of this type are enclosed by quotation marks, indicating that they are not What does a speaker who uses a sentence like that, X is something specific, want to say about that? Here Wittgenstein distinguishes 3 closely connected ideas. One, X is simple, not composite. X cannot be explained by means of words. It is unanalyzable. Three, X is an object that can be grasped by means of a special kind of cognitive faculty. If one does not have this kind of faculty, one is not in a position to come to know what X is. One, red is simple. This means that red plays a special role in the context of our color concepts. It is a primary color, not a mixed color. We should find it hard to imagine a community where red is supposed to be a secondary color between orange and bluish red. Even though such a possibility is not to be excluded for either logical or physical reasons. Similarly, we should not know what it would mean if someone said that he saw the tricolor as something uniform in the same way as he saw red. Such a statement would be in complete contrast with our normal use of color concepts. Oh, excuse me. That's it. Two, red cannot be explained. It is impossible to teach the use of color concepts without ostensive gestures. That is, by employing only words. The experience of redness presupposes a special faculty. A blind man cannot see objects, and hence no colored surfaces. For this reason, he does not know what is meant by red. All three of these claims contain a sound core, but at the same time the seeds of various misunderstandings. The statement that red is simple says something about the role this color concept plays in our language, and it also says something about our techniques of learning and teaching this language, where these techniques may to some extent depend on our biological constitution. For us, it is evident that red is a part of the tricolor. And if we invented a story in which people call the tricolor non-composite and uniform, we should say, hence, we describe a language game that we cannot learn.
Hallå. Salut.
Han står där ute. Där står han. Där är han. Malakias.
Det är det, va?
Nej.
Sitter så vart det efter det måndag på sig. Ja, det var för att du ska hålla tyst eller?
Ursäkta.
Ja, det är det. För oss, vi ska inga roll.
But here we must not forget that the contrasting pair, simple, composite, does not really come in here. For red is a composite, is in virtue of our language game excluded from the very beginning. I think that's very important. I'll repeat it here for clarity, and sorry about the interruption. The thesis that red is simple is a statement about our concept of this color and is, in this sense, a statement about the essence of red. But here we must not forget that the contrasting pair simple and composite does not really come in here. For red is a composite in the virtue of our language game excluded from the very beginning. For this reason, the word simple has not been used in its proper sense, but as it were a kind of reminder emphasizing a certain feature of that language game. Namely the fact that red is one of the primary colors. The statement red is something simple, something specific, does not refer to an empirical property.
بس هيك وكوفي
كوفي شيء امريكان ليه تروح شيء ولا ليش شو بدك فينا بطلب شو
And hence we cannot say things like, now I have seen that red is simple. Thus our thesis cannot be justified or refuted by means of empirical statements. What it does is to indicate a characteristic feature of the grid by means of which we impose a certain structure on our experience. That is the point of Wittgenstein's remark. Red is something specific, but we don't see that when we look at something red. Rather, we see the phenomena that we limit by means of the language game with the word red. So that changes everything. The second thesis, according to which red cannot be explained, says at least three things. A. That redness cannot be explained without the help of ostensive explanations, that is, pointing the Augustinian way. B. That color expressions cannot be explained by means of something of a different kind. That is, something which has nothing to do with color. C. That only someone who is able to perceive or experience red will be able to understand the meaning of red. This claim shades into thesis 3 and will be discussed below. It is an important fact, as Wittgenstein underlines, that we need ostensive features in order to explain color words. I'm gonna put a pause there and we'll have a look see.
خلاص وعلي عندي لسه لما 30 كرام مش هتحول ل 30 كرام هلا 30 كرام مش هحولها اي 70 كرام بدي احول لا بعمل لك 37
ممكن شو عم نعمل هلا؟ شو بدك فيه؟ صحيح بدنا نحكي.
So if color is composite or monochromatic, it's an effect of the language game. But still we need ostensive gestures in order to explain color words. So pointing has an important role, but definitely not the role that the Augustinian paradigm indicates. For the tricolor to be composite is excluded by our language game, not by reality or something out there, but rather by how the working of all the context and how we've been playing out the language game, so to speak. And redness in itself cannot be really explained. I think that's an important feature as well. And to experience redness itself, we do need a specific faculty. That's why it ends in pointing or reacting to something.
خلص خالد هلا بيكلمني وقال له
خذ ستوب زمان بيعملوا كده
كرتون صغير كرتون صغير بفيو
هو اللي بيعمل هلا العزيز زين شيء وهديك شيء.
And of course, as pointed out here, the red can never be composite in our language game. Maybe in some other language game that we cannot fathom. Very important to pinpoint that specifically. We cannot understand it, we cannot fathom it. We can never get into why is it that it is composite in that language or in that life world. That will always be excluded from the possibilities. Instead, when we use language and we are definitely in it, we will directly be able what is wrong and what is not wrong, what is functional. And that effect we are unaware of. But sometime in history we learned it, and sometime in humanity, in our people, in our culture, our life world, that was instigated, was clarified, and almost unnecessary to mention that took a lot of time as well. All of these things we are forgetful of, we don't know about it. It is still participating into that. But we are largely unaware of it. So, if you go down to the bottom, it's our physical makeup that decides whether something is red or green, and we can, in this particular case, only point towards it. There's no other way of explaining it. It can only be shown. Some things are definitely down in the very foundations of reality. I know that these things at periods are called simple or original, but that does not necessarily mean that they are internal. And do remember that pointing gesture itself is an activity, something that you most specifically do. It's not in any regard passive. An active pointing is reaching out in the outside and showing it clearly what you do understand, and so that's how it from the beginning got established, of course. The second conclusion is also one of the greatest. We cannot explain color in terms of something that it is not. Only when going into what something is, something pertinent, actual, that's the only time we can have an understanding. So seeing is deep in there. When we do things, it's an activity of showing, and I like this in the ostensive definition. You do something. This is also referred here to as an unanalyzable. Another comparison that can be made is that you can also call it elementary, indivisible, or why not dependent on a gesture of an act. Could be nodding, could be a certain reaction that you show when you are doing something, which indeed makes it possible for another person that we are actually pointing to the same thing. It reminds me of chirality, which we discussed in context with the great author Stephen M. Rosen. Chirality is in itself not something that could be reduced to something other. Neither can it be explained. It is in that circumstance absolutely non-composite, non-partiated.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
We discussed chirality in context with the Ozma problem. Ozma problem shows that we would never be able to show to an alien how so to speak, how chirality works, and if we are left-handed or right-handed, you need to be there. You need to be shown, like in this pointed thing, and towards what is red. It cannot be reduced to anything else, neither can it ulteriorly be explained. Those two options are both out of the possibility. The only thing here is that it can be strictly shown, indicated. And of course, further down here we can also understand that it is not enough with an ostensive indication. Ostensive definitions do not tell the whole story. You need the prehistory, and you also need to be connected to what is strictly going on you need to share life words. If you do not share life words, how can you point to a similar thing? And I think you clearly see here how pointing ostensive definitions are movements, are actions, our inclinations, if you like, are all in on it. They are all part and parcel of the language game, intertwined in a way where they can never ever be separated. In another lecture series, we mentioned that as the verso and recto of something. For instance, 616 compared to 666. How they are two sides of the same coin, heads and tails, or verso or recto of the paper. That doesn't hinder them from being in the possession of being different as well. So there's another mistake we make in the language game, and preemptively assume that two things cannot exist at the same time, that they are mutually exclusive. And this also goes nicely into what we discussed earlier here when it came to music. That music and the gestures of the music, the directing of the conductor, one musician explaining to someone else how it should be played, taking gestures and using ostensive definitions. They are here completely intertwined, cannot be separated. They go into different areas altogether in some aspects, and they also come together quite closely in a very neat way. They have both faculties at the same time, that of being different and that of being the same. There's nothing in the language game that hinders that. This is, in a very complicated fashion, connected to that original misunderstanding, or the hypnotism of an image, which is so hard to explain. And of course, it's a great part of the Wittgensteinian project. Trying to show this, show the fly out of the bottle so it can flap its wings, if you like. Colors like music are something specific that goes for smells as well. This is also extra noted further down. We'll continue that in the next reading of 1658. But what I point to is never clear. It needs the language game, needs the situation, timing I would say, because the risk of mix-up, erroneous collection or unjustifiable separation of the intended characteristics is constantly present. It's always a possibility. Something that we need to be aware of. And it is added that, on the other hand, ostension is neither an infallible instrument of teaching, it's not sufficient criterion of having learned a color word. And that's the problem of isolation. And you see how the pointing gesture goes into the whole of the language game. All of it is needed. And only then there is some chance of the ostensive definition having the possibility of being clear, actually pointing to what you are looking for. So it all goes in, intertwine and tangle if you want. And without this togetherness, and I would say something often is separated in linguistic meaning and extension. You can see extension as the ostensive functioning. You pronounce a word and that is out there. Here you have the absolute opportunity to combine them all. None is coming out of in isolation. There is an intertwined interconnectedness here that cannot be ignored. All of it is in on it. Every little part of the universe is in on it. Nothing can be reduced as simple as just the pointing. It takes it all in.
معلمي ما تنزل كده اذا بخلص انا بكير هلا غيرت عقدك على تونس بعد ما انت حسبها ما تحط.
Well, it's opening up the subject quite extensively here. I say thank you very much and have a very pleasant afternoon, morning or wherever you are for the moment. Bye bye for now.